Welcome back to Esoteric Home. It is August 22nd, Thursday. I hope you have been doing well. There is a wonderful blue supermoon the other night, which was really cool to look at. Looked huge. So yeah, I hope you're doing well. And tonight we're going to talk a little bit about some ways of powering your magic. So, obviously, doing a ritual, you kind of want to get into a magical state of consciousness or an altered state of consciousness, kind of in a meditative state where you can focus solely on the objective, right? Which is completing the ritual, getting whatever you want, manifesting something, creating a quality to embody, invoking, evoking, whatever it is you're using it for. And I know a couple things. We've been going through the emotional transmutation, basically living in the end result, living in, assuming the feeling of the wish fulfilled, as Neville Goddard put it. And we know emotion, emotion is one of the ways that powers magic, a strong emotion. So tonight I'm going to talk about a couple of ideas from this book, Liber Null and Psychonaught by Peter J. Carroll. It is a fascinating book. This is by no means going to be a comprehensive review. I just want to talk about a couple of ideas that helped me a lot in this book. It's definitely more of a advanced, book. It has a little bit of everything. It has a lot of stuff that he's kind of a scientist and a mathematician in the way that he approaches it. So he has a lot of charts and a lot of kind of mathematical principles, but really cool. So if you're working your rituals, if you're not getting the results that you want, if you need some different ideas to kind of shake things up, hopefully this will help. So in this particular formula, he talks about magical consciousness. Really, the first step is kind of gaining control over your mind. If you are in a ritual and you have a stray thought, sometimes you have to pull your attention back to the focus of the ritual. The better you can concentrate, the better you can focus in kind of this trance-like state, which he refers to as gnosis, the better. So there's a couple different ways he recommends to gain control over your mind. Obviously, meditation is a huge one. Observing your mind, letting the thoughts come and go, that whole thing. So one that I haven't heard from before is kind of what he calls the death posture, which is being motionless, trying to lay down in your bed and not move. If you have to scratch, don't scratch. If you feel like rolling over, don't roll over. Just stay laying as still as possible for as long as you can. And this is pretty hard to do, especially for me. I'm a tosser and a turner. I tend to get like restless legs, so I'm working on it, but I thought it was very cool because it really does demonstrate a ton of self-discipline and mastery of yourself to be able to lay there even for 10 or 15 minutes still, obviously breathing, but not doing more than that, not adjusting yourself. And you'll notice that the body kind of starts to come up with, oh, this aches, or like this feeling is uncomfortable, I want to move this. So being able to kind of observe that in stillness helps you build control over your mind. Obviously breathing, breathing exercises are a big one that's helped me, like doing Wim Hof, whatever kind of breathing exercises that you're into. There's a ton of stuff on YouTube for free, but getting used to consciously controlling your breath is huge. You can do so much with that, it's amazing. And there's surprisingly quite a bit of breathing techniques out there, even though you feel like taking a breath is just taking a breath. Doing deep belly breathing, fire breath. I mean, there's just so many. Breathing in through your nose, in through your mouth, some combination of both. Obviously closing off one nostril, but breathing is another one that he recommends. Not thinking, we kind of covered that in meditation. Observing the spaces in between thoughts, making them bigger, and making the space in between thoughts bigger, and kind of sitting in that space, not identifying with these thoughts, these maybe circular thoughts that keep appearing, keep running around your mind. Kind of stepping back, creating some space in between you and the thoughts, and just observing them, not attaching yourself to each one, not going through that process where you attach and now you're in this circular thought loop. So another cool one. and some different ways to get into a magical trance, right? Some of these are basic, obviously, object concentration. What we're doing a lot of times when we're looking at a sigil is we're focusing on that as the object, paying attention to it, kind of tuning everything out and just tuning in, putting as much of your focus as possible on that object. You can do that with sounds. We do it when music comes on. When there's a good song that you like, it just kind of takes you away and your mind goes quiet. And now all your attention and your energy is in that song. You can do it with tones, like a singing bowl. There's a lot of different ways, but just using that sense, that auditory sense, to just dial in and put as much attention on it as possible. It will still your mind. We talked about image concentration is the same thing, focusing on an image. I guess that's more kind of what we do with sigils. And then he talks also about kind of transmuting a regular state of mind into what he calls, a magical state, which is really alchemy, internal alchemy. And there's kind of two states of mind, or two states of being, that he says are really good entryways into that. First one is laughter. Laughter is such a powerful force. It is, I'm sure we'll continue to discover more and more benefits and how genius it is that we can actually laugh about something. It releases tension, it transmutes whatever state you're in. It's super powerful. Laughter, finding a way to laugh, because that's why they've done studies on people who watch comedy. They can improve their health. It's amazing. It's definitely very, very powerful. And then obviously non-attachment, practicing non-attachment, or disinterest in a way, to where you're observing your life, you're at peace, you're in stillness, you're at the center of your being. You're not getting thrown off this way or that way. You're not having your energy all of a sudden get pulled into something, and then very much just taking up your space and practicing the art of non-attachment, which is kind of like Zen Buddhism, right? Zen Buddhism, Stoicism, all these other practices are kind of creating that same state. So all that builds up basically to being able to improve your state of mind, your attention, and kind of what he calls the state of gnosis, right? The state of the magical state, that powers your workings. So some cool stuff in there. Definitely the death posture, the motionless, is one that I'm going to continue to work on. But basically finding a way to focus your intention, still your mind, and kind of get into that nice, calm, easy, relaxed, focused, magical trance. Okay, and in this particular book, he kind of talks about how, as you can see, gnosis is, let's see, I don't know if that's showing up. No, anyway, so basically the 5 types of magic, as he describes them, as he kind of categorizes them, are going to be divination, whether that's using tarot cards, whether that's using, some form of opening up a book and going right to a sentence, whether that's using the I Ching, whether that's using, like they used to do, is like look at bones, animal bones and intestines. I would not recommend that, but that's how they used to do it back in the day. But trying to figure out what's going to happen next, trying to figure out what does the future hold, what are the conditions, what are they likely to create, what probabilities are likely to spring up in the future, what are the possible futures, what is the main current, like the main timeline, and then what are some alternatives. And another thing he kind of goes into this book is how magic is really increasing the probability of something unlikely happening, making the improbable possible. So does magic work always? I think yes and no. Yes, in a way, it does something. Does it always work in the way that you want? No. And sometimes like when I first realized that magic was real, I did a ritual to have a very famous female celebrity bring me $250,000 by next Friday. Did it work? No, right? It didn't. It's a whole nother story. But the point is sometimes, let's say you need $500 by Monday to pay your rent, and it doesn't happen, right? You can classify that as a failed ritual. Does it still improve you? Why did it go wrong? How could it have gone right? That's a whole other conversation. But really talking about how what we're trying to do with Magick is increase the probability that what we want to happen happens. And I do think that in some way down the road, it could be a lot longer than I anticipated. Something will happen because of that ritual. Like, I do think, like, it's going to the gym. Yes, if you do 10 push-ups, are you going to get shredded? No, but each push-up is successfully taking you to a place that's closer to where you want to be. So you do see sometimes with some rituals, you may not see the results now, but it's helping build that skill set that it's going to allow you eventually to just do it at a drop of a hat, very quickly, instantly, and it's going to create the situation that you're looking for. So divination, kind of got off on a tangent there. And what is my hair doing today? I always take a shower before these rituals, but it's curls. Anyway, invocation, right? Invoking the qualities of a God form, of a spirit, of an angel, whatever it is, bringing out that part of you, that almost like you're allowing, you're stepping into this form, calling it into you so you can exhibit the qualities known with that particular God, particular angel, spirit, whatever it is. You know, like, let's say you were gonna invoke, you know, Ares, the war god, right? Then it's a very martial presence, a very commanding, a very almost like a warrior spirit that now you're going to start acting like. So invoking is one way. So we have divination, invoking, evoking. He kind of classifies that as not just calling a spirit into physical manifestation, but working in a lot of ways with an external spirit to get what you want. We have enchantment. Now this is really kind of what most of, I feel like, I've gone over so far is enchanting, creating the possibility of an outcome, or affecting reality with your will, you know, that imposing your will kind of thing, creating, bringing your desire into manifestation, all those things, tasking, spell work, a lot of those things. Really, a lot of magic falls under enchantment. You're trying to change something in the external world according to what you want, or you're trying to, you know, affect something that gets you closer to where you want to be, kind of thing. So, and then he talks about liberation or illumination, which is like, he calls it, I believe it's the Agoides, whatever, your holy guardian angel. Illumination, spiritual illumination, bringing you closer, you know, bringing you closer to contact or going into oneness with your higher self, or divinity, or God, or supreme intelligence. Really, it's more about kind of raising your soul up to where now you are, you know, one with the universe. You are with the Tao. You know, that's more of like a spiritual enlightenment, that aspect, which is really one of the highest forms of what we call magic, right? Is this spiritual enlightenment, this knowing, this wisdom, right? This Sophia. So at the inner center of all that is what he calls gnosis. And he goes through a lot of different ways to power your magic. So, you know, we've talked about some of the ways that you can kind of still your mind into this state of gnosis. But he has some ways. He classifies them as physiologically inhibitory or excitatory. And these are some of the pathways that people have used. I don't recommend every single one of them. Maybe find a few that work for you. But as far as inhibitory, he talks about the death posture, you know, concentrating on something, going into a magical trance, whether that's an image, an object, a sound, sleeplessness, you know, people who don't get enough sleep, or if they stay out for a long time, they start to go into an altered state. Not the safest thing. Again, I don't recommend you do anything that would possibly harm you, anything illegal. Only do what's safe, and what you're okay with, what's allowed. Fasting, going like when Jesus in the desert, a lot of other holy figures will go on a fast if they need to communicate with God. If they need to get something, they'll sometimes fast for the answer, right? If they're looking for knowledge or for a situation to change. Exhaustion, going through that. I don't recommend you put yourself deliberately through these, but these are some ways that have been traditionally used. Gazing, looking at something intently, just focusing on it, which kind of comes back to the concentration. Just gazing at it, using the portal of your eyes to kind of fix your attention on something. And then he talks about substances, that are hypnotic or trance-inducing, things that have been historically used, substances to help enter the altered state. Again, be very careful, be safe, only do what's legal. I don't necessarily recommend that pathway, but anybody's had a cup of coffee or nicotine, you can tell it changes your state of being, kind of thing. So sensory deprivation, another one, either going into darkness, going into a dark room. They have experiences where you can just basically go into a place that's completely pitch black. I have been in a sensory deprivation tank. Very weird, very awesome, but yes, astral travel, remote viewing, all these kind of psychic phenomena start to appear when your mind isn't constantly streaming external stimulus and kind of starts to settle in on itself and play with itself. Very cool. So another way, as far as the excitatory, we have sexual arousal, emotional arousal, fear, anger, horror. Again, don't put yourself through something that's going to cause you any harm. I'll keep saying that. But yeah, obviously with like sex magic, there's a lot of ways to use that energy and transmute it into what you want. And emotional arousal is kind of the same thing. Whenever you generate an emotion, whether it's intentionally or unintentionally, you can use that very powerful charge to create change. And so if you find yourself in these situations where you're suddenly feeling a strong emotion, even if it's anger, even if it's despair or sadness, grief, overwhelming, keep in mind, if you can use that energy, that very strong emotional charge, and transmute it into your desire, very, very powerful. Like if you all of a sudden stub your toe, you're the last thing you're thinking is like, oh, I should do a ritual right now. But the universe gave you something to work with. You can use that, change it into something that will benefit you by putting that power into one of your objectives, something that you want. There's some other ones: dancing, drumming, chanting, kind of getting yourself worked up. You've seen that's a very, very powerful one, getting your body moving in all these different ways. There's some other ones, like we talked about pain. There's a couple that I won't mention. You talk about the right way of walking where you're very aware of what you're doing. You're not listening to your headphones, you're not kind of looking around, you're very just focused on kind of that rhythmic stepping, and that's the only thing, and it will put you in a meditative trance. He talks about other substances, whether excitatory or disinhibitory. And forced over breathing, going back to the breath, kind of hyperventilating, getting yourself worked up where you have an excess of oxygen in your system, you will feel a buzz. You can get such a rush from just doing breathing exercises where either you just basically, it definitely feels like you took something. I love breathing exercises. That's one of my favorite ways to generate anything, because there's so much that you can do. You can slow it down, you can speed it up, you can breathe from your belly, from your chest. You can start to breathe out of different centers. You can breathe just out of your heart. You can breathe out of your feet, where your concentration is at your feet while you're breathing, or at your crown. And then sensory overload, so completely getting bombarded with your senses. Maybe you're at like a loud concert with lights and everything, and there's a bunch of people, and it's just so much energy, and your senses are kind of just overwhelmed, and you kind of feel like maybe uncomfortable or just remember, that's a very powerful charge. So yeah, it's a very interesting book. Again, I don't agree with everything, but there's a lot of good stuff in here. He has some views that I'm not entirely, you know, I just don't agree with everything, but there's some really good stuff in there. There's some stuff that would be considered heretical, blasphemous, whatever, because, and I think he does that. You know, I think he pushes the envelope of what these belief systems allow, and how one of the things about chaos magic is it's really about adopting beliefs that will help you, you know, and adopting beliefs that, trying them on, you know, seeing what these different paradigms look like, and kind of freeing yourself from whatever it is, that whatever paradigm that you were born into. It's a castle and it keeps you safe, but eventually it kind of becomes a prison. So being able to try on different outfits, see how it affects your experience and your abilities. Yeah, so I know that was kind of a long one. I definitely wanted to hop on, touch base. I hope you're doing well. I recently realized that I can check the comments more efficiently, so I will intending to do that. So thank you again for your comments. Thank you for your likes. Thank you for watching. Yeah, I hope you're doing well. I hope the universe, life, God gives you everything that you want, and you're at peace. And I look forward to seeing you in the next one.